Imagine this. A pig, covered in mud and trembling, stands shackled in the middle of a packed medieval courtroom. Its crime? Murder? The judge stares down, robed and solemn, while monks record the proceedings. The sentence? Death by public hanging. Sound like the beginning of a dark fairy tale? It's not. This happened. More than once. In medieval Europe, animals weren't just beasts of burden or farmhands. They were citizens, subject to the law. And when they broke it, they stood trial. Literally, with lawyers, juries, verdicts, and executions. Why did they do this? What did they believe? And what does this bizarre chapter of history reveal about justice, then and now? Let's step into a world where rats were excommunicated, donkeys had legal defenders, and the line between human and beast blurred in ways that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the past. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't symbolic. In medieval Europe, particularly from the 13th to the 18th century, animals were genuinely put on trial for crimes ranging from theft and assault to murder and destruction of property. And these weren't secret affairs. They were public spectacles, full legal trials. The process was elaborate, procedural, and disturbingly sincere. Animals were appointed defense lawyers. Trials could be delayed if the accused was pregnant or sick. Judges issued summonses addressed to herds of insects. And yes, when found guilty, the punishment could be severe. Floggings, hangings, even burning at the stake. Take the 1386 case in Falaise, France. A sow was tried for attacking and killing a child. She was arrested, imprisoned, dressed in human clothes, and brought before the court. She was found guilty and executed, hung in the town square in front of a jeering crowd. But it didn't stop with pigs. Horses, cows, goats, sheep, dogs, even insects like locusts and weevils were summoned to court. The trials weren't quiet affairs. They were theater, spectacle, moral instruction, a way for a deeply religious, highly symbolic society to confront crime, chaos, and sin, even if the perpetrator had 4 legs or 6. So why? Why try animals like people? Because to medieval minds, the world was ruled by divine order. God's law wasn't just for humans. It covered everything, animals included. If an animal committed a sin, say killed a child, it wasn't just a tragedy. It was a rupture in the cosmic fabric, a sign that evil had crept into the world, and evil had to be addressed publicly. Punishing the animal wasn't just about justice, it was about restoring order, reasserting human dominance, affirming divine authority. And in many cases, the legal treatment of animals was surprisingly formal. A Franciscan friar or local lawyer might be appointed to defend a donkey or a pig. They could argue on its behalf. Maybe the animal was provoked. Maybe the child teased it. Maybe it had no malicious intent. Sometimes they even won. One famous case from 1750 saw a female donkey accused of indecent behavior with a man in Savigny, France. The man was hanged, but the donkey acquitted. Multiple witnesses testified to her good character. They said she'd always been a virtuous animal, and the court agreed. If that sounds absurd, well, it is, but it's also strangely consistent. Medieval thinkers believed in hierarchy. Animals were below humans, but still part of God's creation. They weren't equal, but they weren't irrelevant either. This belief bled into law. If animals could commit sin, they had to be held accountable. And sometimes the church got involved in even stranger ways. Not all animal trials were about individuals. Some were about swarms, infestations, plagues. Say your town was overrun by mice. In modern times, you'd call pest control. But in medieval Europe, you called the bishop. A church official would hold a trial, a real one. The mice, or locusts, or weevils, or flies, were formally summoned to court. The court would wait. The animals didn't show. Shocking. So the judge would issue a second summons, then finally a sentence. The pests were often excommunicated. Yes, excommunicated. Banished from the church, condemned to eternal damnation. Entire populations of insects were cursed and ordered to leave town within a certain time frame or face divine wrath. Did it work? Sometimes the infestations coincidentally cleared up. When they didn't, people tried again. This wasn't done out of stupidity. Medieval people weren't ignorant. They just had a radically different worldview. One where the physical and the spiritual were intertwined, where law wasn't just about punishment, it was about symbolism, theology, and cosmic balance. And in that system, excommunicating weevils made sense. But not everyone agreed. Even in their own time, some thinkers mocked the trials. They saw them as absurd, theatrical, or corrupt. Some legal scholars argued that animals didn't have free will, so they couldn't be guilty. Others suspected these trials were about control, fear, a way to maintain power in a chaotic world. And the deeper you look, the more disturbing some of the cases become. In many trials, animals were tortured before execution, just like humans. They were paraded through the streets, sometimes mutilated or burned. Their bodies were displayed as warnings. There was an unmistakable cruelty in some of it, a desire not just to punish, but to dominate, to erase the line between justice and vengeance. And yet, these trials were also mirrors, reflections of how medieval society saw itself, its fears, its values, its longing for order in a brutal, unpredictable world. By the 18th century, animal trials began to fade. Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and Bentham scoffed at the practice. The world was changing. Rationality was in. Superstition was out. But the echoes never fully died. Even today, we personify animals in court. In some parts of the world, dogs that bite are put on trial before being euthanized. Dangerous animals are declared public threats in legal terms. And we still struggle with questions that haunted medieval minds. What is justice? What is responsibility? Can something without reason or moral agency be punished? In a way, animal trials weren't just about the animals. They were about us, about what it means to be human, to have laws, to assign blame, to make sense of tragedy. They were rituals, not just rulings. And the question they leave behind is this: were they a grotesque miscarriage of justice or a strange form of societal therapy? But here's where it gets weirder. In 2023, a historian stumbled across newly translated court documents from a remote Swiss monastery. The trial? A raven accused of spying for the devil. But this wasn't just superstition. The records mention coded messages, secret symbols carved into tree bark, testimonies that sound eerily like espionage. The raven was executed, but the monks, they disappeared. The final pages are missing, torn out. What were they hiding? Was it all fantasy? Or did something more sinister take flight? That's a story for another time. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content.